Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Unfound Now. If you're looking at this video and saying, well, that doesn't quite look right, I am on the road. I am in Lake Mary, Florida. I'm over here at a hotel over here for a disc golf tournament, and I'm doing this video on November 28th, 2020, and I had some time, and I thought that it was important to do another Unfound Now, because there is a disappearance that's a little over a month old that I want to talk about. And that is the disappearance of Alan White, who disappeared from Dallas, Texas on October 22nd, so about 5 to 6 weeks ago. And I touched upon it a little bit during the Unfound Live Show this past Wednesday, so like 3 days ago. And I said that I would be doing an Unfound Now because I think that this is a different kind of disappearance than I've talked about on Unfound Now. So it gives us an opportunity to, of course, ourselves, this YouTube channel, to get the word out about Alan's disappearance, but also to, once again, as we did the other videos, try to teach all of you how we look at and analyze a disappearance that is fairly new. And of course, I think this one being a month to 5 weeks old classifies as being fairly new. So I think with Alan's, we get to talk about a couple new concepts that have not been covered in the other Unfound Nows so far. So once again, he disappeared from Dallas, Texas on October 22nd, 2020. Actually, very early in the morning. And the timeline goes like this. Alan left his home approximately 4:45 in the morning. He got to his gym in LA Fitness at approximately 5 a.m. And then he is seen on video leaving the gym at 5:38 a.m. At about 23 minutes later, registered that he bought gas or bought some things at a racetrack gas station. If you're unfamiliar with racetracks, they are like a version of 7-Eleven or Sheetz, something like that. Very popular in the southern United States. We have several here in Florida. And he was there at 6:01 a.m. And to read the accounts, the articles, allegedly they see him get into his car and drive off in the direction of his home. You should know that his home is only a mile to a mile and a half away from this racetrack, this gas station, and he was alone. Of course, he would have been home within minutes, let's just say 5 after 6 or something like that. He did not arrive. Now, you should know that Alan is married. He is gay, and his husband's name is Rusty. And Rusty also that morning went to his gym. They did not go to the same gym. I don't know why that is. But Rusty also went to the gym, and he got home at about 6:15 a.m., and I think he expected Alan to be there. And he wasn't. But he knew that Alan had a conference call for the company that he worked for at 7 a.m. And so as the clock kept getting 20 after 25 after 6:30, Rusty started to get more and more worried, and he tried calling Alan's phone, and of course, Alan did not answer. It is unclear at this point whether it went straight to voicemail or the phone rang and rang and rang and then went to voicemail. That is unclear. So, Rusty at 7 a.m., when Alan was not there for this conference call, Rusty decided to get in his own car and thought maybe there was a car wreck, something happened. So he started driving around that area, driving to the gym where he knew, taking a variety of routes. And of course, he did not see Alan or his vehicle anywhere. And you should know that Alan was not driving his own car. He was driving a what you might call a courtesy car. His own car was in the shop, and he was driving a Porsche Macan, M-A-C-A-N, which is a very high-end, as you would imagine, a Porsche or Porsche SUV. So I'm guessing that Alan also had some sort of high-end car that it was getting worked on. Well, Rusty did not see Alan or this vehicle, and at approximately 11 a.m. that morning, October 22nd, 2020, he let the police know, filed a missing persons report regarding Alan. A couple days later, and I'm going to just scroll down. I'm using my notes are over here to the left. A couple days later, the car was found, but it was found 10 miles in the opposite direction of the house from the racetrack. I understand that it was in a kind of a shadier part of town, rough neighborhood, but the Porsche, the SUV, was not harmed in any way. There were no articles saying that anything was found in the vehicle that has helped police. Of course, it's a missing persons case still a month later after they found the car, so I would guess that to be true. No public records or no public accounts of any signs of violence in the vehicle, nothing like that. I believe that the SUV was locked and the keys were not in it. The only part that kind of caught my eye is that the Porsche's seats were wet. Now, what could that mean? Maybe the windows were down and it rained, or did somebody wipe the seats down? Of course, in a Porsche SUV, the seats are probably going to be leather. So if you wipe them down, they might stay wet for a while if you do not use a dry towel to wipe them off. So they could be wet for a couple different reasons. So that is where the disappearance stands at this point. There is no news at this point on November 28th, 2020 as to whether any phone records or anything like that. I've read the most recent articles within the last week regarding Alan's disappearance, and there's nothing saying anything about that. Regarding phone records, where the phone pinged, who did he last speak to, and in fact, that's going to lead us into some of the questions. There are some reports out there saying that on at least one of those videos, whether it was on the gym video or the racetrack video, that he was on the phone in the video. So maybe he was leaving the gym at 5:38, he was on the phone. Or when he was getting gas or walked into the store, they saw him on the security camera and he was on his phone. At this point on November 28th, 2020, nobody has any idea, at least the public doesn't, as to who he would have been on the phone with. Now we have to remember, this is Central Time. Let's say it was at the racetrack at 6 in the morning, and maybe he was talking to some business partner in this big corporation, and that business partner would be at 7 a.m., and maybe that person is headed into work and needed to call Alan about work or something for the conference call that they were going to be having an hour from now. Very possible. All right, I know there's been some, well, why would he be talking to somebody? But that is one possibility. Of course, we all know that we don't talk to too many people at 6 a.m. in the morning. Usually it's, once again, it's some sort of business issue, or it could be family or friends. It doesn't sound like it was Rusty, because he's he's made public statements, and at no time has he stated that he was talking to Alan at any point that morning. So the concern right now is that a month later, and the public does not know who the person is. Moreover, that person has not come forward. If it is true that he is seen on video, I've not seen these videos to show that he's on the phone with somebody. So there's that. So maybe somebody got this account wrong of him talking on the phone, but I have read that a couple different places. And if that is true, that's certainly something they're going to look into. And I have to believe that 5 weeks into this, that they do have the cell phone records. It sounds to me like Rusty could not get them on his own, that the police had to do what they can through a subpoena to get them. The next thing that caught my eye, and it seems has caught other people's eyes, is that it was a very short workout. He got there at 5, meaning the earliest he probably could have started working out was 5 after 5, and he's already leaving the gym at 5:38. So he got a half-hour workout in. Maybe just got right on the treadmill, cranked out a half hour of walking or running or something, and got out of there. I think it's at least conceivable. I'll tell you, when I go to the gym, I spend more time than that in there, but I don't know. And we have to remember also that he had this conference call at 7, so maybe he cut his regular workout short so he could get home, get a shower, comb his hair, shave, etc., so he could look good for this conference call that I'm guessing was probably going to be a video conference call. So I don't know if that's suspicious or not. I know some people seem to be very suspicious of that. I'm just not convinced, but the alternate theory is, why was he there so short for such a short time, and was he really there to work out? I'm not saying I believe that. I'm saying that is one line of thinking out there. The other point that kind of catches my eye is that the racetrack and the gym are not far away from each other. But he's leaving the gym at 5:38. He's not buying gas until, I guess, the pump, I guess, or whatever he was doing there finally went off at 6:01. That's 23 minutes. The racetrack gas station is only 6 miles away. But it took him 23 minutes to do all of that. Maybe because he was on the phone. Maybe he got delayed because of this phone call. Certainly possible. But that is something that needs to also be looked at. I'm guessing they are looking at that, and the phone records would surely show that. Now, if it turns out that he wasn't on the phone with anybody, and it took him that long to get from the gym at 5:38 to finish his transaction at 6:01, then we need to start thinking about some other scenarios, because it has been stated, at least in the newspaper articles and website articles, that the video does show him getting in his vehicle and going and driving away by himself in the direction of where he lives. The big issue regarding all of this is, how could something go wrong in just 1 mile from the racetrack to his house? Could somebody have carjacked him? Well, I think on a Porsche, the doors are going to automatically lock. As soon as you put that vehicle in drive, they're going to be locked until you stop again. Maybe he did stop again. Maybe the racetrack was not the only place he was planning to stop on. There's maybe some other location between the racetrack and his house. Maybe he stopped there and something happened. But if it was a carjacking, why does the car end up in good condition and it's locked and the keys are missing? It's maybe a little hard to understand. Carjacking, I usually associate it with car theft. Somebody steals the SUV, parts it out, and obviously that's not what happened, because the SUV was found. However, I will say this. The way we look at disappearances on Unfound is that most of the time, we believe that vehicles, if they are found and the person is not found with the car, that most of the time the vehicle is not left there by the missing person. That's what we generally believe. There's exceptions and everything, but percentages say that car was probably not left there by the missing person. But it all depends on where the car was found, how long did it take to find the car, what was going on before the person went missing. There's a lot of points that factor into that. The concern of it is, if it was a carjacking, then Alan could have been dumped anywhere. And we don't know how long that SUV was sitting there. It was found 2 days later. It could have been sitting there for an hour before it was found. It could have been sitting there for 36 hours before it was found. We just don't know. Okay, so if this was something happened, he did stop somewhere else, and somebody got in the car with him and threatened him and told him to drive somewhere. We just don't know how long the car was there. We should not take for granted that the car ended up there an hour after he was at the racetrack. We also can't take for granted that it was there an hour before it was found by whoever found it. Now, we have covered some disappearances on Unfound like Alan's. Certainly not exactly like, but kind of like. Ronald McNutt, he was a guy who was going to work, didn't show up there, and then after a forest fire in Northern California, his truck was found over a cliff with a body in it. That was 2016. The body inside Ronald's truck has still not been identified through DNA, and it's outrageous, but that's the truth. But I don't know if a crime was committed there. Did something happen to him mentally? Did he want to commit suicide? We just don't know. We don't even know if that's him in the truck yet. Cleshindra Hall, she had to walk about a mile home from where she was walking from one house to another. Vanished seemingly in between. Some people believe something happened at the house where she worked. Other people believe she got snatched while walking home. Once again, only a mile from where she was walking to where she lived. Helen Diamond was at a party with her husband. They got into a fight. He left. She was forced to walk home. She never made it home. A couple mile walk. That was back in about, I think, 1981. Brian Sullivan. He had stopped at a Burger King, was on his way home, and then his car was found abandoned. Later, he did not make it there, and it is believed that foul play is certainly the main. It's the main theory in Brian Sullivan's disappearance from New York, Rochester, New York, and unfortunately, the main suspect in his disappearance is now deceased. But that is a situation where probably drugs or something else could have possibly been involved, that he was stopping somewhere on the way home and something went wrong when he stopped at this person's house. Greg Brooks, kind of appropriate being that I'm just in the general area here of Lake Mary, Florida, where he disappeared from Castleberry, which is just to the west. And he was going to work at a movie theater, never showed up. And his car was found over in the Tampa area. Once again, a few days later, didn't seem to be anything wrong with the car, but Greg was never seen again, and that's a disappearance that's over 20 years old now. Car was found, if you want to know the distance from Castleberry, Florida to Tampa, it's about 100 miles. So long ways away. But, and if you look up Greg's case, he did struggle with bipolar disorder, although on the evening that he disappeared, it didn't seem like there was anything wrong with him. Tyler North. Now, what's interesting about this one is that 2 people are now in custody for Tyler's murder, even though his remains have not been found yet. He was at his sister's. He said he was going home, but at the time, nobody knew that he was secretly texting with his ex-wife. And she lured him to a park where I think he thought the 2 of them were going to have sex, but she was waiting there. The theory goes that she was there with her boyfriend, and they killed him. Don't ask me. That's what the sheriffs or the deputies and the police department in that area have charged Tyler's ex and her boyfriend with murder. You have to talk to them. They're the ones that say this. That's what I believed when we covered the disappearance. So I'm inclined to agree that there was foul play here. It's just that Tyler's remains have not been found yet. So that was one in which he was lured somewhere for sex and something happened. We also can't forget Jennifer Casper Ross, who was at her mother's taxi cab company where her mother worked. She seemed to be, something was going on with her mentally, and she ran off. Her house was only a couple miles away. She allegedly never made it home. Some people believe that she did, and that her husband killed her, but there is no proof of that. But she said everybody thought she was on the way home. And but she is still missing many, many years later. So we do have some disappearances that are generally like Alan's, in that people going home, people going somewhere, people getting very close to home and then not making it home, and then vanishing, their car being found, or them just maybe like Cleshindra Hall walking home and not seen. Of course, there's no car to look for. So we've covered some like Alan's, but I wouldn't say any of those are exactly like his. Now, the big issue is that each of those has its own unique theory. Murder, suicide, you can go down the list in each one of those. So it's hard to apply any particular one of those to Alan without knowing more information that we just don't have right now because it's such a new disappearance. So I don't know if we can apply any of those to Alan's, and I hope Alan's disappearance is solved today, tomorrow at the latest. But if it is not, if it's another month, another 6 months, then we might be able to slowly start narrowing it down to which one of those disappearances is most like Alan's. At this point, I think it's just a little tough to say. But here are some things to keep in mind about Alan's disappearance. Gender and sexuality matter. Because what I mean by that is, if Alan wasn't Alan, if he was Alexa, and Alan was a woman, and Rusty was her husband, and if everything else was the same, Alexa's seen at the gym, Alexa's seen at the racetrack, and she's seen getting in her car and driving home, and then her husband says she never made it home, and her car's found 10 miles away 2 days later, I can tell you many people would suspect that Alexa's husband, Rusty, did something to her. That doesn't mean he did, but a lot of people would suspect him. But in this particular situation, being that they are both men, although some people seem to be online suspicious of Rusty, certainly not as many as if they were in a heterosexual relationship, with Rusty still being the man and Alan being a woman, Alexa, for example. Just a name I pulled out there because it's kind of close to Alan. So the perception is different because Rusty and Alan are gay and are not heterosexual. In addition, with Rusty, at least the way I understand it, his behavior seems totally rational and logical. So what that means is that when you look at disappearances, the gender of the person missing is very important. And if they are in a relationship, the kind of relationship is very important. Once again, given their sexuality, their sexual orientation, their sexual choices. This is all factored in. This all matters when you're trying to form a theory about what happened to a missing person. But I think this is a very good example of how you just change one of the genders of one of the people, and the public perception of the disappearance totally changes. Whereas I think that a lot of people do not suspect Rusty, but they would surely suspect him if Alan was a woman and everything else was the same. Phone information, number 2. Phone information is the best indicator. You have to remember, Alan is out, he has his phone. Rusty starts calling him at about 6:15 in the morning to 6:30, and already Alan isn't answering his phone. What we don't know if Alan, if it went right to voicemail or kept ringing and ringing and ringing. But as I continue to say, this is something I always bring up with the Jennifer Kessie disappearance, phone usage is probably the best indicator of when a disappearance starts. When a phone is switched off and it's not switched back on. When people are getting text messages and are not responding. When they're getting phone calls and not calling back. Even if you want to get into the really, really shady side of it, a person who talks on the phone and suddenly he or she is just messaging people and won't pick up the phone when people call. That is a prime indicator that the person, there is some scam going on. Somebody's using that Facebook account to... John Smith is actually missing, but somebody's pretending to be John Smith and talking to his friends and family. That's certainly what happened in Eric Franks' disappearance. Absolutely. So with Alan, that he did not pick up his phone starting around that 6:30 area, it means sometime in that half hour for sure is something happened. Whether Alan just decided to leave on his own, or somebody attacked him, or he was meeting somebody and something went wrong, in that time frame is when it happened. Okay? Phone, I'm going to keep saying it. Phone usage, looking at records, and of course if we can get the ping information. When we don't have any DNA or anything else, phone usage is one of the best ways to really narrow down a timeline for a missing person. Okay. And then also, third thing, you have to understand that Alan was, it seems, very professional, educated. It seems he was wealthy. It seems he and Rusty lived very well, doing very well for themselves. He's driving a Porsche Macan or Macan, while this other, I'm sure, high-end automobile is getting worked on. They're doing well for themselves. This just shows you that disappearances know no demographics. They don't know demographics at all. It can happen to anybody at any time, whether we are suspect foul play or something with somebody just walking off. You know what? People who are wealthy and have families and children, they walk off too. They leave too. They can have bad thoughts in their head too. They can decide that, I want to be single again, so I'm going to change my identity. They can do that too. Even though I would say we don't cover a lot of very, really, really well-off people on Unfound. I don't know how many really covered like that. We usually cover a lot of just middle-class people who have gone missing. That's the way I would explain it. And of course happens in that demographic. It happens to poor people, and it can happen to rich people too. It doesn't matter on your sexuality, gender, anything like that. It can strike at any time depending on what's going on with the person and the choices that person is making in his or her life. Okay? I think that's what we can learn at this point regarding Alan White's disappearance. I appreciate you watching. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not yet a subscriber to the Unfound Podcast Channel, please do that now. And if you'd like to contribute to the program, go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. Thanks for watching.